Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bear Show. This is your host, Andre Matoyer, and I just want to say thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and listening to this particular episode. It means a lot, and I really appreciate your support and your continued support for my podcast. So I really, really appreciate that. If you're just new and listening to the podcast for the first time, welcome, and feel free to follow and subscribe to The Bear Show on Apple Music Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify as well. So thank you. And for today's episode, it's going to be a pretty personal one. And it's going to be as well a part one of a multi-part series that I hope to get into more detail on. And that is going to be the topic of body image issues. I know that this is a topic that I've talked to a lot of my friends about, and it's something that I feel like needs to be addressed more in society, and we need to have more conversations about it. I know that oftentimes we think about body image as being more of a women's thing, but I know it's not just a women's thing. It's definitely something that everyone experiences, or a lot of people experience, and it's definitely prevalent in the gay community, and yes, even in the bear community, despite generally being more of a body positive group, we still definitely see body image issues in there. And I am no exception to that. I have been having body image issues for most of my life, and there's multiple reasons for that. But first, what exactly are body image issues? Basically, body image issues are just when you are unhappy with your body. So you tend to be overly critical, you're maybe insecure with your body, maybe angry, frustrated, disgusted by the way that you look, or sometimes even the way you think you look. Sometimes body image issues can give us distorted realities, and that's called body dysmorphia. Um, Sometimes we try to get outside validation, or some of our friends might tell us, hey, you look great, or, you're over exaggerating it. But for anyone who has deep rooted body image issues, you know that while they mean well, it doesn't always last, like the good feeling or the compliments they give you. A real change for dealing with body images come from within. It's you trying to overcome and work through those issues yourself. Um, so, through talking to other people, I know this is a common issue. And with me, I've been working with a therapist and trying to get some help on managing my particular body image issues. But before I get into the other episodes over the course of the podcast over the next few months, I figured why not just sort of break down my personal experience dealing with body image issues, and maybe someone listening to this podcast can resonate with what I'm talking about and find some maybe takeaway or inspiration from it. So once again, thank you for taking the time out and listening. And, here's basically my issues and my history with body image, because yes, I have it too. So when it comes to my personal issues with body image, there are a few factors that played into why I have it. And the first is going to be my relationship with food. The second would be how I was raised. The third being a huge impact on society and how that has impacted me, and like what society thinks is acceptable. And then also coming out as gay and being active in the gay community has definitely been eye opening and has definitely put more body image issues in my head than I had before, for better or worse. So, the first one that I mentioned with food, I would say that's probably the biggest issue that I have, and it's the one that I struggle with the most. I've always been sort of a stocky big guy, and I've always been the guy who eats a lot from the day I was born. My mom said I was the one that kept drinking milk, like clearing out the hospital, and the nurses were like, "I've never seen a kid eat this much." So, like, trust me, I like food. But my biggest issue with food, I'd say, is that I've always used food as a crutch instead of just for nourishment. I've used it as a crutch for emotional and anxiety. It's not unheard of to have something like, comfort food here and there, but for me, it was more than that. It was my escape. Just like someone who maybe, drinks alcohol too much, or, does something, toxic to their body. That's how food was for me. It was more than just food. It was my drug. It was my escape to feel better. So, with food, especially with easy access to unhealthy foods and, the abundance of sugar and additives, food became a recipe literally for disaster for me. And it contributed to a lot of my weight gain. Um, Part of that is because when you eat via stress, that can lead to being what I am and what I would call a binge eater. So, a binge eater is something very real and something that I deal with. I'm a lot better now, but it used to be a lot worse, and it's still something I'm working on. But basically, what a binge eater does is they use large amounts of food as a coping mechanism. So, just like a binge drinker might overdrink on alcohol, right? A binge eater is going to overeat and overindulge on specific foods. I can remember one specific time, this was about 2 years ago, where I was on the way home from work. This was when I was teaching, and it was like around 3:30 and 4. It was just on my route home. And I remember just being hungry and stressed out about something I can't even remember. But I decided, you know what, I'm craving pizza. So I went and I got a large pizza from some restaurant and said, all right, you know what, I'm just going to chill tonight. I'm going to eat this pizza, maybe watch some Netflix, not think about work, whatever. Well, I don't know what happened, but I blanked out. And by the time I got back to my place, the entire pizza was gone. I had literally eaten it, the whole thing in my car. And literally from the pizza place to my place was only about maybe 15 minutes. So that means in 15 minutes, I ate an entire large pizza and just totally slammed it down. And I might have ordered some extra stuff too, like breadsticks. I don't remember, but I just remember eating everything that was given to me, like so quickly. And to be honest, I probably could have eaten more because at that point it wasn't about like feeling full. I just was like stressed out, and that was my only way of calming it. Um, but that was just one example. I mean, I've done all sorts of stuff before where maybe I've cooked food, but then I still order something, or maybe I'll order from two different restaurants, pretend it's for two different people. I mean, it's not great, but it's something that I've done. And when you binge eat, you feel like crap afterwards. So you get this emotional and you get this high for a moment where you just feel like the sugar rush, but then all of a sudden you just crash and you just are like, oh my god, what did I just do? Like this is not good. But my relationship with food, I'm working on, and it goes up and down. But binge eating is a huge factor for what affects how I view myself and my body. Being a bigger guy, I'm always really self conscious about my gut, like my face, as far as like face fat. And when I look past a mirror or when I look past a window, or if I'm looking, anytime I see my reflection, I'm always constantly judging. And, it's interesting because in the bear community, people tend to like some of those features, but for me, it tends to be a turnoff. And so, at least for myself, which is interesting. And so I get really self conscious about it. And so my diet, which I know can be good or bad sometimes, plays a factor into how I view my body. The next one is going to be how I was raised. So for this one, actually, my parents are very much into fitness and health, and they always have been, which has been great. My stepdad, he's works out like literally 5 to 6 days a week, and he always has since the 80s, and he looks great. Like I'm like, dude, you do you. You look awesome. My mom, she was always the cardio queen growing up. She loves it. She can do aerobics classes, Zumba classes all day if she doesn't care. And she probably goes to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. But they both go religiously. They don't like bad food. They eat very healthy. They're great. Um, Growing up, they helped me sort of curb my relationship with food. I think kind of tricking me without me realizing it. I'd have to ask them how they did that, but I know they've mentioned before that they helped. But they also got me active, and they helped me get involved in sports like football. And with that, I was introduced to weightlifting at a much earlier age than probably most people, like around 11 or 12. And so learning how to exercise, learning how to weight train, getting involved in sports, that definitely helped with like the exercise part and making me feel better about my body. But now I had this pressure of trying to look a certain way for sports and trying to be competitive and athletic, but then also fighting my addiction and my relationship with food. So at that point, I was already starting to feel a little bit body conscious. That ties in with the next one, which is society. So, society tends to value thinner people. It's just what we see in the media. If you ever go shopping for clothes, you always see extra mediums, larges, and waists that are like 30, 32. Hardly ever do I find things, like, or if they do have 2XL, sometimes they're always gone, which either tells me A, stores don't order enough of that size because they don't want to sell to people of that size, or they sell out quickly, which tells you that more people are probably 2XL. Still, it's always just a little bit harder to find clothes. I'm on the border where I can find stuff in most stores, but um, not quite there to go to a big and tall store. Although I have gone to a big and tall store, and they've been like, "Oh, sweetie, you're small here," which I'm like, "All right, thanks." But still, like being right on that border is frustrating because you feel like you're not really built for the society that you're in, and for some reason you're different, and that's never a great feeling. Um, with that too, like society, we have sort of a lot of mixed messaging going on when you watch TV and when you see what's going on. For example, like try watching a TV show. Chances are you're going to see a commercial for one food item that's brand new on some menu somewhere. And then you might also see another commercial just right after that for a new fitness equipment. So you get these signals like, hey, eat like crap and eat whatever you want. Look at all this good food. But then also, yeah, like this is how you can stay fit. So it's like, you know, which one do you want, America? I'm not blaming America for my problems, but I'm certainly saying that that constant mixed messaging is confusing, and that is something that we see a lot. It almost makes it seem like that's okay. I could eat this piece of crap, meal if I just work out afterwards, and that's not always the case. Um, but that mixed messaging of, this is what you should be in society versus what I am is definitely toxic to how I view my body, and that's definitely something that I struggle with every day, especially when I have to do activities that involve travel or shopping, anything that involves being around other people, because I'm constantly like, am I in the way? Am I too big? Am I blocking something? Those are questions that, that keep me up at night sometimes, and it's not fun. Um, the fourth thing is coming out. So being gay and men liking other men, it's a challenge because men are very visual, and that's just a fact. It doesn't matter if you're straight, a straight male, or a gay male. Men are just visual. We see a lot, and this is seen in media. It's also just kind of a thing where we know that guys can be sort of dicks to women that aren't pretty, which is bullshit, but it's a thing. But it's the same thing for gay men to other men. Like, there's a lot of men that get ignored simply because they're not the same or the right body type as someone else, and that's just unfortunately how it is. You don't even have to get to know the person; they'll just get dismissed because they're not, quote, the right body type just from the glance. And gays, we're so visual. We've got all these different types of bodies that we could probably catalog it and still forget a type, but all of that contributes to each of us feeling a little bit like less than because we're comparing ourselves to each other and to what we like. And it can get really confusing and really overwhelming because there's a lot of that judgment that happens inside the gay community. And I've seen this even in the bear community. So the bear community is great. I love it. Everyone's been awesome for the most part. But, even though bears tend to be more body positive, I've still definitely seen instances where, bears can be sort of preferential as to the type that they pursue and dismissive to other types that are not what they're looking for. Um, there's been situations where some guys are like, oh, this guy's too big for me, but that same person might be too small for someone else. All of that does is make that person who can't seem to catch a break feel really insecure about their body when they really shouldn't. That's just the fact. And so all of those issues sort of compound and become, the focal point for why a lot of gays have body image issues. And we see that. I've talked to a lot of gays about this. I know that a lot of them have expressed that they have this. If you go on your Instagram right now or Facebook, chances are you're going to see at least 5 gym pic selfies within the first 10 minutes of scrolling through it. I'm not judging that at all. I do that myself. But we do that because, yes, we all want a little validation, especially if we've, made a certain goal or we've lost a certain amount of weight or maybe gained or whatever. We want that validation, and maybe that's the validation that someone needs to wake up the next morning and go back to the gym again, right? So more power to you. But the fact is that we do it because body image is on our mind, and that is something that we are feeling the pain of, and something that we deal with. When it comes to body image, I've accepted the fact that it's never going to go away. What I'm working on right now is my relationship with my body through my relationship with food, through how I think about good habits, what I think about my goals, what do I want my body to be. Those are things that are helping me get through, and then also working on more positive self-talk. So, there's been times when I have a moment when I'm really insecure or frustrated with my body, where I will say some of the most meanest, horrible, nastiest things to myself. It is awful. Like, these are things that I would never say to anyone else. You should not be saying it to yourself at all. But we do. We're our own worst critic most of the time. So working through better ways of saying that is more appropriate. A great example is, I used to go to the gym a lot as a kid, but there'd be times throughout my life where I'd go a lot, like high school, and then there'd be times where I wouldn't go, like the first few years of college, and then it would be back and forth, back and forth. That's life, right? People gain weight, they lose weight. That happens, pretty much your whole life. You're going to go up and down. But there'd be times where I'd go to the gym after taking maybe a year break and feeling like crap because I'm like, well, I wonder what you would be now if you never took that break. I'd start to get hard on myself about that. And then I'd feel like you're a failure, you're a piece of shit. Yes, you know how to use the gym. It wasn't that I was ignorant of how to use the equipment. It just felt like I was embarrassed because I was a has-been or I shouldn't be there. And that deterred me from wanting to go back. All these like stupid mental things that affected my body and affected how I viewed myself. All that does is it gets in my way. So learning how to override that with, hey, Andre, like, you had shit going on in the past. You can't change what you did last March. So you're here now. Like, who cares what you were like when you were in high school, or who cares what you were like when you were 19? No one cares. Like, this is where you are now. You're trying to better yourself for your future now. Like, don't let that stuff bother you. And so turning those negatives into positives are kind of a good way to deal with those body image issues as they come up. And that's how I do it. So, between working on my relationship with food, my parents being supportive, I'm fortunate to have good friends who are supportive with, talking about body image and being there for each other with that. And then, just kind of paying attention to how society is affecting me, and also just, being just a kind gay, and being there for each other. For anyone listening to this episode, if you ever feel like, you see me and you want to talk to me about it, I'm all ears. I think, especially when we go to these bear events and gay events and everyone's shirtless and people are swimming, you know, you can be in what someone else thinks is the best shape or worst shape. It doesn't matter, but you might feel less than for a moment or insecure for a moment. Don't. Chances are, this is something that I've noticed, more people are more worried about themselves than they are about you. So, set your own goals, have your own mindset, and don't let that really bother you. But the biggest thing with body image is the fact that we all have it, those issues, and we all just need to find better ways of dealing with them and healing from it. So that's my story with body image. I've had lots of people say, Andre, you're cute. Andre, how can you have body image issues? You're this, you're that. And thank you. I really appreciate that. But again, my body image issues has to be solved from within. About 2 years ago, I kind of have an embarrassing story here, but I reached my all-time highest weight, which was around 350 pounds. And I, wasn't sick yet with diabetes, but I was borderline. I was constantly out of breath. I was tired. I was miserable. I was depressed. And a light bulb moment sort of came on for me when I went to use the bathroom in the teacher's lounge and I broke it. Literally, like, broke the toilet in half just by using it. The maintenance staff was cool. Like, I played it off. Everything was fine. No one said anything. They got a new toilet in like the next day. But that was a wake up call for me because I literally broke the bathroom, which should not have happened, right? So that was like, all right, what are you going to do about it? So, despite what people say, Andre, you're cute, you're this or that, I decided to do what was best for me. And through those goals, I started loving my body more. I'm not saying I wanted to be super thin or whatever, but I was doing what was best for me. And that helped me sort of get through and push through some of those body image issues that I was having. And so, everyone has those moments, and that particular one was mine. Ironically, when I was working on losing weight, that was 2 years ago. I've lost some, but I gained a little bit back. I struggled with noticing. People would be like, "Oh, Andre, it looks like you're losing weight," and I'd be like, "Am I?" And honestly, I would have to look at an old picture, or I'd have to sort of like double check maybe a piece of clothing item and wear that and be like, "Hey, okay, this fits now." Because when you have body image issues or body dysmorphia, where your mind kind of tricks you as to what you're actually thinking when it comes to your body, it's very unusual. You don't always have a sense of reality as to what you look like. So I couldn't always tell that I gained or lost weight. People would kind of have to tell me. I have to sort of prove it with photos or, wearing a piece of clothing. It was very interesting. And it works both ways. Like when I gain or lose weight, it's the same for me. So that is my experience with body image. I'm hoping over the next several episodes to spend more time on talking more deeply about issues such as body dysmorphia, health, even body positivity, and looking at this issue from all different sides and angles, because I think there's a lot to unpack here. And I think it's really important that we spend time addressing this. So that being said, thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope that this maybe made you feel a little bit better and that you're not alone in those body image issues. And, I'm looking forward to putting out the next few episodes where we can tackle this in more detail. Speaking of which, following this episode is the next part of body image issues, part 2, where myself and a very dear person, Mr. Jake Briscoe, me and him go through and break down more about body dysmorphia. So look forward to that. And that being said, I just want to say thank you so much again for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Once again, you can find The Bear Show on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and pretty much anywhere else that you listen to music and podcasts. And if you have a suggestion of a topic or if you want to be a guest host with me, please feel free to message me at thebearshirshow@gmail.com or the Bear Share Show on Instagram. So thank you, and I hope all of you have a great rest of your day. So thank you for listening to today's episode. Have a good one.